Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I'm delighted to be joined here by Dara Berry of Galway BO for the 2023 Intercounty Mayo season preview. We're going to be discussing all things Mayo ahead of the upcoming 2023 Intercounty season, as well as looking back at Mayo last year, the trials and tribulations and everything else of Mayo football. So Dara, how's things with yourself? We're chatting off air there. You're keeping well, and I suppose all set for another intercounty season and another year following Mayo, which always seems eventful.
Yeah, and first of all, thanks very much for having me on again. It doesn't seem like only a couple of months ago that we were chatting last year, and I had great expectations for another kind of Mayo semi-final or final maybe appearance, but it wasn't to be. But yeah, look, obviously, another big year coming up. I don't think my expectations are going to be as wild or as high as they were last year. But again, with Mayo, you just never know. Obviously, some huge losses there, which we'll obviously discuss coming up in the next few minutes. But yeah, just looking forward to getting back into it again. Even now with the FBD League starting, there's great buzz and excitement about, Mayo facing Galway in what is basically just kind of a pre-season to the league. It shouldn't really mean anything to anyone, but even in Mayo, there's great excitement about it. Like I myself was trying to get tickets for it, and they sold out within a matter of seconds. It was, I think, easier time to get an All-Ireland final ticket than it was to get tickets for the FBD League. So yeah, you can see the excitement and the mania is back again in Mayo for another season. And yeah, just can't wait to get into it, really, to be honest. Starting from the FBD League and going forwards into the league and then the championship.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, because it was an interesting year last year, wasn't it, for Mayo? As I was saying to you, like when we were speaking last year, like there probably was a bit of expectation, all right, maybe after obviously beating Dublin in the semi-finals, and although you lost to Tyrone in the final, you did feel like something was really building. Like, where do you think maybe, or why do you think maybe it didn't quite sort of set off in the way that maybe people expected? I mean, obviously there were injuries and everything else, but what were your sort of take on it?
Yeah, I suppose, like looking back, it's easy to say that the two teams that bet us last year were ultimately the finalists, in Kerry and Galway. So I suppose you can take some sort of kind of solace in that to say that we were beaten by better teams who, ended up being the two best teams in the country at the end of the season. But yeah, I don't know, just things didn't really seem to tick for us at all. Like that first day against Galway, I was in McHale Park for that game, and we just never really got going. We were a couple of points behind. We dragged it back, in the first half. Same story again in the second half. Couple of points behind, dragged it back to 1 point. Had a chance at the very end to level it, and it was skied wide. But to be honest, if we'd came out of Castlebar that day with a draw, it would have been unfair on Galway because they were much the better team. And to be honest, Mayo just never really clicked after that. In other years where, say, we would have been dumped out of the Connacht Championship early, we would have came back, hit the qualifiers running, had some convincing wins and kind of pushed on from there. But this year or last year gone, even in the qualifiers, we just never really seemed like we were convincing in any sort of way. Like, we kind of just fell over the line in the qualifying matches. And going into Kerry, like, while the county was probably, silently hopeful that we might be able to do something against them, I don't think there was any ever sort of belief there that we were going to be any sort of match to Kerry, or, that we were going to be able to stop the firepower of David Clifford, or, their attacking prowess. So, yeah, it was, as you said, it was a very strange one, because obviously coming off the back of the previous 2 years where, we successive final appearances, you would have thought that maybe at least a semi-final appearance was on the cards, maybe, a good run in Connacht, retain our Connacht title, maybe. But yeah, no, we never really seemed to get going. And I suppose there's no real answer for that. I mean, you could probably talk about maybe player burnout. A lot of those section of players have been going for, years and years on end with no real kind of break, especially when you think of, the successful teams like your Westports and your Castlebars, they've been going and going and going, and you just wonder if maybe it all came to a halt last season, and the legs just weren't there. And as you said yourself, we were unlucky with a couple of injuries too, that restricted us. Tommy Conroy being a massive one. And it'll be great to have the likes of him back this season again, and to see what he can do up forward, because he was obviously ripping it up in the previous season and was one of our best players probably of that year. But in terms of pinpointing where exactly it went wrong, I don't think there was any sort of one, whereas we were just beaten by better teams on the day. And, as I said when we started the chat, to say that, we were beaten by Galway and Kerry, you can kind of take a bit of solace in that, and just say that, yeah, at the end of the day, they were the two finalists and they were the two biggest teams in the country. So, it's only right that they would have bet us on our day. But yeah, look, hopefully we'll be coming back stronger this year now. The main thing I think that every Mayo person would be hoping for, I think sights of All-Ireland finals or anything like that is very far away in every Mayo person's mind at the moment. What we'd be looking for is a very good league campaign, and to hopefully get the Connacht title back, and to make that our own, and to make McHale Park a fortress again, where people are afraid to come and play against Mayo in their home ground. And to be honest, I think anything after that would be a bit of a bonus. But yeah, 2022, a disappointing season, but at the same time, a lot of players that owe us absolutely nothing, and a manager that has owed us absolutely nothing for his work over the last decade as well.
Yeah, because even getting to a league final as well, which is in most seasons for most counties would be a good achievement. But maybe because of, as you've said, some of getting to so many All-Ireland finals and so much heartbreak, that maybe that was probably looked down upon. And then obviously the scoreline as well, with Kerry having won so convincingly. But there was a lot of promise there sort of in the start of the year. You got a couple of good wins in there. I remember beat Dublin again, couple of other sides in there. I think maybe only Tyrone and Kerry beat in the league last year. So all in all, it was fairly good in the league, and there was sort of, although there were injuries like that, there was plenty of positivity around the county this time last year.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, we had a massive league run. We're comprehensively beaten that day against Kerry in Croker for the league final. But yeah, I suppose, we won the league back in 2019, and we kind of celebrated it fairly widely. The fans, it was our first piece of silverware, and in Croke Park, and since I think 2001 was the last time we won the league. So we kind of treated that nearly as a mini All Ireland final. So yeah, I think maybe getting to the league final this year was kind of overshadowed by the bigger picture. I don't think, well, speaking personally myself, I don't think I treated it as big of a final as I did maybe in 2019 when we won. But yeah, no, we did have a strong league campaign. But as you know yourself, I suppose there's often times where teams have a strong or weak league campaign, and then it's the complete opposite then when it comes to championship. A couple of years ago, Galway would have had a very strong league campaign, and then just kind of faltered then when it came to the Connacht Championship. So, while it's great for trialing out new players and for kind of seeing what sort of status you are in amongst the other kind of big guns, I don't think it means much when you're coming into championship. I think the clock kind of resets and you go again. So, that kind of, I suppose that's what happened to Mayo. Galway had a very strong league campaign too, and I suppose you could say the two of us were coming into that, Connacht game very much on a level pegging, on a high. Both got to league finals, both ready to just go for it in the championship, and looking at the bigger picture of getting the Connacht title. And on the day, as we were saying, they were the much better team and deserved it way more than us. But obviously, we would want to be going into this year hoping to get a good league campaign out of the way, hoping to, first of all, guarantee our safety in Division 1, because I think being a top side, you need to be in Division 1 year in, year out. And then anything that comes after that, if we can get another league final appearance, great. But definitely just holding on to the League 1 status there would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I suppose as we were saying there, obviously with James Horan, it being his last year, I mean, he was obviously in two spells and in charge of Mayo, brought Mayo to multiple All-Ireland finals, won a whole host of Connacht titles, that league title you mentioned in 2019 as well. I mean, it probably did, look from an outsider looking in, and almost it felt like it probably just was one of them things where end of an era and all the rest, probably did take Mayo as far as he could, and maybe it was time for a change.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, the Mayo fans owe James Horan absolutely nothing. He's given us, the best days of our lives since, he came in first in 2011. Came in with a kind of a transitional team, really. Like, you know, I know there was a lot of young stars coming up, but, you know, Mayo are on the back of, you know, 3 or 4 years of, you know, of being in the desert, really, between 2007 and 2010, where I think we only had maybe one Connacht title in those years, you know, maybe the odd All-Ireland quarter-final appearance, but definitely nothing of the heights of the early 2000s and, you know, the late 90s and stuff like that, or the mid 90s. So yeah, when James Horan came in, and, you know, he obviously held that fantastic record up until last year gone, where, you know, he had always brought a Mayo side to at least the semi-final of the All-Ireland final, or of the All-Ireland series. You know, and in his first stint, you know, I don't think he ever lost a Connacht final, you know, always brought us to either a semi-final or a final. And, you know, this time around as well, you know, it was nearly much the same as the first stint. And, you know, I think Mayo fans have a lot of trust in James Horan because of, you know, what he done first time around and all the great days that he's given us. That when he came for the second stint, I don't think anyone kind of feared, you know, oh, he's been here before, you know, should we have gone for something different? I think there was a lot of excitement in the county where it was like, you know, this man has brought us so close before, maybe he can bring us that close again, and who knows, even get us over the finish line. You know, sadly it wasn't to be. You would maybe think that, you know, if things had gone differently against Tyrone, you know, and we had won, would he have gone out in that high that he had probably sought for the last decade? And that would have been obviously the fairy tale ending. I'm sure himself, you know, I'm sure he didn't want to end his Mayo managerial career, you know, with a heavy quarterfinal defeat. You know, I'm sure he would have wanted to go out in a gallant, you know, semi-final or final performance, but you know, it just wasn't meant to be. But again, he owes us absolutely nothing. You know, the days that he's given to Mayo GAA, both as a player and as a manager. Like, I mean, I suppose when I started watching Mayo GAA first, my earliest memories, you know, he would have been on that team from the early 2000s, and, you know, he was a fantastic footballer then. Or sorry, he was a fantastic footballer and a servant to Mayo then, and, you know, the service he's given to them since as a manager has been, you know, absolutely fantastic. But, you know, as you said yourself, you know, you do get these periods where maybe the old guard are kind of stepping away now. You know, there's various retirements that's happened with Mayo in the last couple of years, which we'll obviously get to the newest one, you know, in a few minutes. But you know, maybe he just thought, look, there's going to be new players coming in, there's going to be old players going. Maybe it's time to give someone else a chance and see what they can do with the Mayo team and how far they can bring them. But yeah, again, you know, James Horan absolutely owes nothing to us, and, you know, has always given his best for Mayo, and I believe he brought Mayo GAA as far as he could get them. And sadly, just on those particular days against Dublin and Tyrone teams, we just didn't have that extra bit to push us over the line.
Yeah, and then obviously Kevin McStay coming in as manager for the 2023 season. I mean, he's obviously flirted with the Mayo job a couple of times in the past, and, you know, he was quite vocal, I think, in other interviews, like speaking about, you know, not getting the Mayo job and everything else. And obviously goes to Roscommon, wins the Connacht title, does very well there. I think everyone's very familiar with him from his work on the Sunday game. But in he comes to Mayo. I mean, what were your thoughts when that got announced? I mean, it was definitely surprising for a lot of people to see him, you know, maybe not necessarily get the job, but the fact that he came so close to getting the job in the past and then didn't get it. But what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think there was a quote from the time when he went for it the first time around, when Holmes and Kennelly got it, where he got a phone call from someone in the county board, and I think he said something along the lines of, "Why would I interview for a job that's already gone?" So I think the kind of writing was on the wall early doors there, that he had a feeling, you know, even though he was running for it, it was not really his time to get it. You know, I think it's a big you know, job and a big role for him to come into. You know, but he's proved it time and time again, you know, with his club record, and as you said with Roscommon as well, you know, he does have the credentials there to back it up. And, you know, he's a fine backroom team there in, obviously, Stephen Rochford, who's been at the helm at Mayo before, you know, brought us to 2 All-Ireland finals, you know, knows what it takes to get there. He's Liam McHale there, who's also been involved with background teams at Mayo, has also, you know, been in All-Ireland finals as a player with Mayo, again, knows what it takes to get there. You know, Donny Buckley, who has been involved with Mayo background teams before, you know, same goes with him. So, I mean, it's going to be a huge task for him, but I'm sure it's something he'll relish. And as you said yourself, you know, he knows football inside out, you know, and we can tell by his analysis on the Sunday game. You know, he's very tactical minded, and it'll be interesting to see what he can bring to Mayo GAA. You know, obviously Mayo are playing Galway on Saturday in the FBD League, you know, and he's named the squad on Friday night, and there's a plethora of new people coming in. He's handed one or two debuts to different young lads as well. So, you know, hopefully that'll be the modus operandi going forward as well, because obviously, as we were saying, you know, there is a lot of old guard that's going, and the hunt is on to try and find the next, you know, next talent out there in Mayo and the up and coming ones. And yeah, to be honest, I think he's probably going to be tasked with a difficult job, because we are in a bit of a transitional period. But again, that's I suppose what would make or break a good manager, to see what they can do, you know, in these kind of situations. But yeah, you know, his record with Wisconsin was great. I don't think anyone expected him to get, you know, anywhere near a Connacht title with them, and he did. You know, had a good run in various championship seasons with them. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see what he brings, and it'll be definitely, I think, something different to what Mayo might have witnessed in the last couple of years.
Yeah, like, and you mentioned there about transition, and obviously, you know, the fact that there has been retirements and players leaving and everything else. Like, it does feel like a real transition year. Like, I felt like it was kind of maybe a bit like that a few years ago, but as you said now, like, there isn't too many sort of survivors of the crop that probably broke through in the 2010s. Like, you obviously still have the, you know, Aidan O'Shea and Kevin McLaughlin sort of knocking around the panel, but Lee Keegan's obviously retired, and there've been plenty of other retirements in the last couple of years. So it does seem to be a big sort of switch from, you know, the older guard now into more fresher players who've, you know, played for the under-20s and whatnot over the last couple of years.
Yeah, to be honest, I was going to say this to you. It kind of reminds me of when John O'Mahony took over in 2007, where, you know, there was talks, you know, there's obviously good underage setup in Mayo, and there was talks of good, you know, really talented lads coming through. But there was just those couple of years where there was the transition between, you know, certain older players retiring and the new players getting into, I suppose, you know, the senior level and getting into the comfortableness of, you know, playing high standard football week in, week out. And while you could see the potential was there, obviously we didn't have much success in those years. So I like, obviously, you know, I'm hoping that we do have success this year, but in saying that, I feel like yeah, it could be something along the lines of that, where it is that bit of a transitional period. And I suppose that's kind of in my own mind, that's why my expectations aren't as high this year for Mayo. You know, as I said, I'd be very much happy with a Connacht title, and to have some new blood coming through, and you know, some new names to cheer on. But yeah, no, he'll have his work cut out for him. But I suppose, again, going back to talking about the league, it'll be great because, you know, Galway and Roscommon are in there, and with the way the Connacht Championship has fallen at the moment, or sorry, with the way that it's fallen this year, you know, we play Roscommon first, and then the winners of that play Galway. So at least we're going to all get a feel of each other, or feel for each other, in Division 1, and, you know, and we'll kind of know what sort of level everyone else is at, and that'll help us going into the Connacht Championship then to see, you know, where do Mayo match between, you know, Roscommon and Galway.
Yeah, and obviously Lee Keegan's retirement, which got announced earlier in the week. I mean, it was, I felt like a lot of people expected it to come at some point, with the fact that he'd obviously been appearing more in the Sunday game, and he's obviously been knocking around for a good couple of years. But maybe the only surprising thing was it being announced so close to the inter-county season. But, like, I suppose, first of all, what are your thoughts on Lee Keegan as a footballer for Mayo down the years? And I mean, obviously that retirement news, tough to take as a Mayo fan, but like, Lee Keegan definitely, you know, owes nothing to Mayo supporters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those ones where you could have been putting your fingers in your ears for ages to try and block it out, but it was very much a heavy kind of rumor that was being circulated around Mayo that, you know, it's been rumored that Lee Keegan is going to go, you know, and there's been crunch talks with him and management to see could they keep him for one more year. And, you know, I think at the last couple of years, like, I mean, you know, he's a little girl now and stuff, and I think family is kind of taken priority, you know, and rightly so. And yeah, I think he just probably knows himself, or knew himself, that he couldn't commit to Mayo GAA 100% anymore, and, you know, has just walked away from it. But, you know, like, people were saying on social media that he was one of the best players to never win an All-Ireland. I think that's unfair to him. He's one of the best players ever, regardless of his achievements. Like, I mean, his performances against Dublin, those 2 goals against Dublin in the 2 different finals, I mean, they're up there with one of the, with some of the best goals that have ever been scored in Croke Park. Again, just a great warrior of a player that you could rely on. Not once could you ever say that, he didn't put on his best performance for a Mayo team. He was always 8 out of 10, no matter when he stood out on that pitch, and you could always just rely on him like a pure leader. And yeah, irreplaceable is one of the words that comes to the mind. Like, but he's a very, I suppose, coloured player. Like, I mean, he may not have won an All-Ireland with Mayo, but like, he has the All-Ireland medal with Westport in intermediate. He's got the county title this year at senior level with them, and with the way Westport are going, who knows? He has another couple of years in him, definitely in club. He could easily get to a club final with Westport and grab a senior All-Ireland with them. But definitely one of the best players to ever grace the field. And I think this time last year we were talking about another retirement, and saying that it was another notch on the Mayo belt of great players to leave without the Celtic cross. And it is sad to think that we'll be talking about Lee Keegan in 20 years to come as one of the greatest players to ever play. And yeah, sadly he just didn't get it on the day. He didn't manage to get that medal. But regardless of that, I mean, still a super fantastic player. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be very hard to try and get someone to even lace his boots in terms of the next couple of years. But as we were saying about the new blood coming forward, who knows? Like, someone might impress us now this year, and we could say this might be the man to take his place. But yeah, definitely a big shaped hole there in the Mayo backline.
Yeah, because even as a Dublin fan, like watching those All-Ireland finals, I mean, he was always the player that I feared the most, to be honest, as a Dublin fan, because he was always the player that popped up. Like, even as a halfback, like he was getting goals, he was getting big points, and you knew when he was on his game that Dublin were in for a game. Like, and you think back to even some of the tussles with Jeremy Connolly. I think some people were saying it during the week. I think he scored 1-4 off him in one of the All-Ireland finals, and Connolly didn't even score, or might have scored a point or something of that nature. Like, I mean, an extraordinary player. Like, and like, if there was any player that ever did deserve an All-Ireland, like, it probably would be him, because even in All-Ireland finals, like, he has delivered. He has put in top class performances, and even in the last couple of years as well, like 2021, I thought he was very close to winning Footballer of the Year. And even last year, although it was a disappointing year for Mayo, I still felt like he was one of the standout players, and like for Mayo last year. So probably was surprising to see him retire, but as you said, like, it probably has been the amount of football, the amount of commitments, and like, it can't be easy, I'd imagine, consistently going year on year. And as you said, time now to focus on the club, which is very much in good stead for the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, he kind of repackaged himself as a cornerback, in the last couple of years of his career. That was maybe a sign as well that the engine, and don't get me wrong, still had an enormous engine in him, and still does, but it was probably a sign that maybe the engine of 2016, 2017 wasn't there, and he was focusing more in terms of his man marking side of things now, in the latter years. But I mean, he kind of redefined the role of a halfback in my mind. Like, as you said there, those tussles with Jeremy Connolly, will probably go down as one of the greatest rivalries, between two players in the GAA history. I think Fergal Boland told a story the last day after his retirement, which I thought was very fitting. I think, was it before either the 2016 or 2017 final? They had an A versus B game in Mayo. Just to, I suppose, if anyone could grab those final few player spots, that were up for grabs. And he said that, that Lee Keegan was marking him on the day. And obviously Boland was looking to get a point or two, try and prove himself. And he said that I think Lee Keegan outscored him something like 1-2 to 3 and kept him scoreless. And that just shows you the type of player Keegan was. Like, he was a back by trade, but by God, like, could he get up forward and get himself a vital goal or a couple of points when needed? And, he always seemed to be a great clutch score player, like, popping over points when needed from long range, or just getting into those spots. Like we mentioned earlier, the 2 goals against Dublin, I think both of those goals put us ahead in vital moments of the game where we were kind of lagging behind by 2 or 3 points. And yeah, I mean, players like that come only once in a generation, I think. So, as I was saying earlier, I think it's going to be very hard to replace someone like Lee Keegan. But yeah, I don't think it's not going to be the last we hear of him in terms of winning titles. Like, I think there's definitely another 1 or 2 club titles in that Westport team, and they were very unlucky to get knocked out by McCullen this year. Who knows if they got past that mark? They could have even got themselves closer. But yeah, there's definitely more in Keegan, and yeah, I think just he, as you said yourself, I think he knew his kind of race was run in terms of Mayo. And again, as we were saying earlier, I think no more than Horn stepping aside and saying, maybe it's time to let someone else in, see what they can do. Maybe Keegan is thinking the same thing. Maybe it's time for me to step aside, let someone fresher legs in and see what they can do and how they can prove themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting, all right, because even in another podcast there about a week ago, like someone was saying to me about him maybe being the greatest footballer to ever play for Mayo. And I'd be curious to know your opinions on that. Obviously, there hasn't been short of talent through the years for the Mayo footballer, certainly a lot of players, but where would he rank in your opinion in terms of the greatest footballer to possibly play for the county?
Oh, definitely in the top 3 in the last, as long as I've been watching Mayo football, the last 25 years, you could say. Definitely up there with Andy Moore and Keith Higgins, Kieran MacDonald. If you want to go to the 90s, probably up there with Lee McHale, the likes of that. But I think in my lifetime, definitely he's in the top 3 somewhere along with Higgins and Andy Moore, and I'd find it very hard to separate the 3 of them. But yeah, there's easily a shout to be made there that he's the best player to ever play for Mayo, without a doubt. And one of the best players, as I said earlier, to ever grace a pitch, GAA full stop, All Ireland or no All Ireland. He's phenomenal, and yeah, sad to see him go, and definitely a once in a generation player.
100%. And obviously looking at that full back line, like you were saying there, like obviously a big hole to fill with him gone. But you obviously had Oisín Mullen, who was kind of integral, whether he was playing a half back or playing in the full back line as well. He's obviously gone off to the AFL. So there's definitely going to be some fresh faces in that defence this year, and that's definitely going to be a bit of a headache for Kevin McStay and to sort of work on now over the start of the league.
Yeah, I suppose you say headache, but I suppose it is a good headache to have that, there is a lot of options there in the back line of new players coming through for Kevin. So I suppose it's better to have, various options than maybe just relying on 1 or 2 people to come in and try and fill that gap. First of all, in terms of Oisín Mullen, another massive loss, two big blows to come out of, the defence line there. But at the same time, you wouldn't begrudge a young lad like Oisín going off and plying his trade in Australia and getting a few bob for it. And I think any Mayo fan would agree as well, that they'd be happy to see him go and do well out in Australia. And who knows what a couple of years' time might bring. If he goes out to Australia and gets a few titles out there, gets a few wins under his belt, and because come back here a stronger, even more bigger player than he was when he left, that could prove vital to us, and it could have the same as like a Ty Kennelly effect maybe of Kerry a couple of years ago. But yeah, obviously, he'll be a massive loss alongside Keegan, and he burst onto the scene a couple of years ago, and Mayo fans were kind of taken away by him. They just couldn't believe that we had unearthed this kind of fantastic engine of a footballer. I suppose you could say similar to Keegan himself. When he came on the scene first. But again, no more than the Keegan retirement. You could put your fingers in your ears, but there was a lot of rumors circulating that he was going this year. Obviously, last year was the same. There was a lot of rumors going around that he was going, and I think it was kind of a last minute 11 o'clock job. He stayed, but yeah, no, best of luck to him, and hopefully, as I said, he can come home to Mayo whenever that might be. Maybe it might be next year, it might be 10 years time, and come back a better, more improved player than he already is, and bring something fresh and new to a Mayo squad. But in terms of the back line, of new people coming in, if you even look to Mayo Galway in the FBD League, Kevin McStay has named the team on Friday, and you have Jack Coyne coming in from Ballyhonus. They're off the back of an intermediate win over Clymena this year, so I'm sure he's going to be, very determined to prove his worth to Kevin McStay, to say that, look, I deserve to be in this team. I'm a proven winner. I've gone out and won with Ballyhonus this year. I have something to give to the team. You have Fenton Kelly from Davids. He's going to be handed his debut against Galway in the FBD. Again, he's going to want to prove himself. Rory Brickerton with Westport, they're senior champions at the moment in Mayo. He's been obviously in and around the team the last couple of years. He's going to want to get himself more established this year now. And then obviously Sam Cullinan has been there as well for the last couple of years, in and around the league and championship team. So I mean, as we were saying earlier about headaches, he's got a handful of players there alone, and that's just the ones that are named, on Friday, on Saturday for the FBD League against Galway. I'm sure there's plenty more that Kevin is eyeing up at club level, and that he's going to be probably bringing in and out between now and championship. And again, it's going to be an experimental championship, I think, but that's hopefully where we might see our next star coming from.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose that is the positive, isn't it? Like, in the last couple of years, like when there have been players who've stepped away or retired, like you haven't been short of players coming into the side. Like I remember even in 2020 when Andy Moran obviously steps away, and all of a sudden Ryan O'Donoghue bursts on the scene, Tommy Conroy comes on the scene. You got players like Owen McLaughlin coming into the team as well. Like you're never a shortage of players around the county, so I'd say like that is a positive. And as you were saying there has been underage success in the last couple of years, like with the under 20s in terms of winning Connacht titles, are coming close, and obviously with the minors they haven't been far away as well. So like there is plenty of players sort of coming through the ranks for Mayo at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And like one of the players you've mentioned there, Owen McLaughlin, like has had a fantastic couple of years. Obviously got that belt against Dublin that put him out for the final against Tyrone, but there's touches of Lee Keegan there in him, like in terms of the way he can take a shoulder off the pass, or a pass off the shoulder, and burst forward and get into good positions and good scoring positions. So and again, he's a Westport man too, back off a senior club win in Mayo. So there's a lot of proven winners in this squad. Like they might be young, but they have tasted what success feels like, and they know what it takes to win, at club level. So I suppose it's that age old thing of, can they make the step up to county and replicate it up there? But Owen McLaughlin is one of the, I suppose, certified players now that has done that over the last couple of years, and it's going to be a great boost to have him back. And as we were saying earlier as well, to have the likes of Tommy Conroy back after missing him last year, he's going to be a massive addition to the squad. And it's going to be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, like any other players you can think of who might make a step up, maybe like in around the forward line or even midfield, or sort of impact subs. I mean, like there's definitely a lot of depth in the panel, but any players even sort of catching the eye in the FBD league or anything of that nature?
Yeah, like I mean, it's great to see the likes of Fionn McDonough is back on the team. James Carr has been in and out the last couple of years. He's back. Like both of those have played fantastic at club level. They've kind of, I suppose, flirted with the idea of becoming established senior players. So I think, a good league campaign for the likes of them could really see them come in and become certified, regular starters for Mayo. Conor McStay is coming in from Balna. He's been brilliant at club level. There's been a lot of talk about him at home. I feel like he could maybe be not maybe one of the starters for this year, but definitely in terms of an impact sub, he could be someone that could be brought on to get a score or two for Mayo, when it's needed. And definitely in terms of fresh legs, it would be great to have someone like that on the bench.
Yeah, I think Conor McStay, is he the nephew, is it, or son of Kevin McStay? I think it is.
I think it's nephew. I don't know exactly. We'll have to get the family tree out, but I think it is nephew.
Yeah. He's there's definitely a relation there. Anyways, but yeah, no, I've heard his name knocking about a couple of times actually, like on social media as well. Like so, definitely interested to sort of see what kind of game time he gets this year. But we're speaking about the league there, and obviously Division 1 is always super competitive, and you've seen even last year with the likes of Dublin going down. You'd Galway go down a couple of years ago yourselves. Like there always seems to be big teams getting relegated, and it's always tough to stay up in Division 1. Like I think last year there were some teams fighting relegation, but also with the possibility of still getting into a league final. It was kind of a mad division. So like, what is the expectation, do you think, for Mayo in the league? Is it just to stay up, do you think, with some of those changes, or do you even think, you know, maybe you might even push for a league final again?
Yeah, as you were saying, like, you know, Dublin got relegated last year, but I think even in the final minutes of their last game, there was still a good chance that they could stay up, and I think even get a last, you know, qualifying place to get into the, you know, into the top four or whatever it was. So yeah, it can be a bit of a mad league like that, where, you know, one loss or one win can put you one side of the table, you know, very quickly. But yeah, like, I suppose we've been lucky the last couple of years. We've had strong league performances. You know, 2020 we were, you know, within minutes of being pushed down to Division 2 ourselves. You know, only to be saved last minute by a point by, I think it was a Kevin McStay against Donegal. You know, and there's been years before that as well where we've flirted very closely to the edge and to relegation zone. So I think, you know, speaking for myself as a Mayo fan, I would be very happy to secure Division 1 status very quickly, and just have that in the bag. And then anything after that would be a plus. You know, obviously, it would be great to get to another final, and great to get to a final in Croke Park. And, you know, I think after crashing out in the quarterfinal last year, I don't think we'd take a league final in Croke Park for granted again. You know, I think we'd very much enjoy the experience of the day out, whatever it might bring. But yeah, definitely first and foremost, avoiding relegation is key, because, as I was saying to you earlier, you know, if you want to be considered a big team, you know, a constant Division 1 status is so important. And, you know, in terms of facing the teams that you're going to be facing in Division 1, they're more than likely are going to be your opposition, you know, in the championship when it comes to the latter stages. And as I was saying earlier, with Galway and Roscommon being there, you know, you kind of get a flavour of what the Connacht Championship is going to be like even. So yeah, I think being in Division 1 is so important. Like, you know, we went down, as you said, a couple of years ago, and you know, it wasn't a dogfight to get back up. You know, we did win our games fairly handy, but you know, it was kind of just one of those things where you can see why teams fall down and stay down in those kind of lower leagues, because, you know, you have scrappier teams, and, you know, going away to them, it can be hard to get the win sometimes. So, you know, I think, yeah, a Division 1 status is key.
Yeah, like, and from maybe speaking to other Mayo fans, like, what do you think the general feeling is like from Mayo supporters going into 2023? Because even on like some YouTube videos and podcasts I've uploaded recently talking about Mayo, or if Mayo have been in the conversation or anything of that nature, like, there does seem to maybe be some slight negativity I've found going in this year. Like in terms of obviously the retirements and Oisin Mullen not being there, and maybe it's just a culmination of all the sort of previous years that have happened in terms of losing All-Ireland finals and everything else. But like, what's the feeling been like from any Mayo fans you've spoke to?
I don't know, is it negativity as much as it is kind of uncertainty? I think if we were going at this year again with James Horan at the helm, I think Mayo fans would probably be a bit more optimistic, because he's obviously brought us, you know, to those places time and time before. That there will be that bit more kind of trust and faith in him. Whereas with McStay, obviously it's a brand new manager and brand new season, so I think Mayo fans are just kind of uncertain as to how, you know, the next couple of weeks are going to go. But, you know, we'll know fairly early on in the league. We'll know how things are going, and, you know, I'd love nothing more than if we, you know, came out of the blocks with a win or two straight away, and, you know, to kind of build that confidence. And but yeah, like, I mean, obviously not having Mullen and not having Keegan, you know, they're two massive blows, and you can see obviously why the confidence might be gone in Mayo fans when they see those two big names going. And I think, you know, touch wood, I've no wood around me, but you know, if there was any injuries or anything to add to that list, then, you know, in the next coming weeks or months, you would have to say that Mayo fans' expectations will be limited more and more. But as I was saying earlier, you know, talking just on my own perspective, I think a Connacht title I'd be more than happy with this year. And then anything other than that would be a real plus. But, you know, I think the kind of best case scenario in my mind would be a Connacht title, and, you know, build a really strong team, that, could maybe get to an All-Ireland semi-final, maybe even get to a final, who knows, but that is definitely building for the future, and I think any Mayo fan that's coming into this year thinking, right, it's all about this year, it's definitely not the case. It's all about the next 5 years. We're at the stage now where we're building a team that's going to take over for the next decade, and will hopefully give us as much success as the previous decade has brought. But that's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be building blocks there, and yeah, hopefully it just won't be too severe, I suppose, on Mayo, and we won't see too much of a kind of break in what we've been used to in terms of success.
Yeah, because I suppose it is all about building stability as well. Like, and as we were saying, with injuries to, like, I think Ryan O'Donoghue was missing for a lot of the championship games last year. Tommy Conroy was obviously missing as well. You've a Killian O'Connor who's had injury problems. Like, there's been a lot of injury issues with Mayo. So I think that's kind of the main thing, really, building a bit of stability, and obviously putting a starting 15 out that can kind of hold the fort maybe for the next couple of seasons, because obviously there has been other retirements as well, the likes of David Clark and I think Cathal Barrett a few years ago as well, a few other players. So I'd imagine just sort of, get the lads out onto the field, build a bit of game time, experience, all the rest, and then maybe a few years further down the line, maybe then you can talk about possibly ending the way for Sam.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's great. There was word, I think last week, that Jason Doherty and Kevin McLaughlin were going to stay on for the year as well. So, it's great to have, along with the likes of Aidan O'Shea and Killian O'Connor, people who have been there, done it, for the last decade, and, have, ounces of experience to give and advice to give to the younger players coming up. And I think that's vital. Like, it's not a clean break in terms of, the whole old guard are gone, and we're left with a new bunch of players. There's still very much a good solid crew there from the last 10 years or so. And, it's great to be able to have them to call on, and who knows, like, I don't know what McStay's plans are, like, whether they're going to be starting players or whether they're going to be impact subs. But it's great to have them to call on to, and, if a game is in a melting pot and it just needs a cool head and someone that's, has that bit more experience than a younger player, it's brilliant to be able to call on the likes of Jason Doherty or Kevin McLaughlin to come on, and the likes of Aidan and Killian, who have, seen various Connacht title successes and have been in various finals. Like, I'm sure they'll be, a wealth of knowledge to the younger lads coming through. Yeah, so that's going to be very vital in terms of the building blocks over the next 5 years. And yeah, I mean, you'd have to say fingers crossed that, that's the last we've heard of retirements now for this year, and hopefully we can just crack on with the squad we have now.
Yeah, and you mentioned Aidan O'Shea there. I mean, what type of role do you think he could play with Mayo this year? I mean, obviously under James Horan last year, he was sort of, I think he was moved into midfield at times, and he was in the full forward line, and probably does get a lot of unjust criticism a lot of the time from, different sections of supporters and neutrals and everything else. But what type of role do you think he could play in 2023 for this Mayo side?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, like, in 2021, I suppose there was kind of huge news around him being subbed off against Dublin. And, many might have argued that he should have been subbed off against Tyrone as well in the final. But, it's a difficult question to answer, the whole Aidan O'Shea situation, because, he's obviously had massive success in the past at full forward. I think, was it either 2014 or 2015, was going on rampages against teams and, scoring massive amounts, and, was vital in beating a Donegal team in 2013, I think it was, in that role where he was full forward. But yeah, it is hard to know. Like, I mean, he's been kind of bandied about from position to position in on the pitch, and I think that probably leads to a bit of uncertainty himself about what his role is in Mayo GAA. If he had a fixed one where it's like, okay, we're going to be deploying you as a full forward, or no, we're going to need you in the middle of the park, or, no, you're going to be a half forward, or, it's really hard to know. With McStay coming in, he might even make the big call that, maybe it's time to let someone else come into those positions, and maybe have Aidan O'Shea as, an impact sub coming on. Again, someone who might be able to control a game or slow it down if needs be, or, if we're maybe, a point or two down and a couple of minutes to go, do you stick him in full forward, throw in a high ball and hope for the best? These are obviously questions that are going to be answered. You'll kind of get a feeling of what McStay is going to do with them in the first couple of rounds of the league. Personally, I don't know myself what I would do. Like, I think at times when he's been in midfield, obviously great at fielding the ball, great at turning over the ball, but there's been times where we've been on the attack and the ball has come to him and he can be kind of very slow on the play and, maybe kind of hinders a real attacking play like that in terms of, maybe taking a few steps and seeing the next option that's coming. But yeah, I suppose when I think of Aidan O'Shea, I think of those great times that he had at full forward when he was, fielding high balls and, scoring 2 or 3 goals in the Connacht Championship against Sligo and stuff like that. But again, and no disrespect to Sligo, it is, I suppose somewhat easier to do that against the smaller teams, but it was kind of showed then when we played the likes of a Kerry or a Dublin that it just didn't really work the same. But again, it is really hard to know. A couple of years ago, he marked Donaghy at fullback, so who knows? Who knows where McStay is going to put him or what he might try next? Like, I think. Yeah, he's at club level at Brafey. There's been times where he's been played at half back as well. So I mean, you can say there that he's been tried out in every line of the pitch. He's been in at one stage or another with club or county. So yeah, it's a hard one to kind of, I suppose, guess now, not having seen what McStay's plans are. But definitely a lot of food for thought from there. And again, a great experienced player to have at his hands. Like.
Yeah, like and even as an impact sub, as you said, like to have him as that sort of trump card, even potentially, like let's say for example in an All Ireland quarter final or in a qualifier game or something of that nature. Like I think for any fullback who's maybe after marking one of the Mayo full forwards, whoever it may be, maybe a Tommy Conroy or something of that nature, and then all of a sudden Aidan O'Shea comes on, it's a completely different player to pick up, and having him coming on as fresh as anything in the final 10-15 minutes when he has the experience of playing in those big games, in those big moments. So like having someone like him come off the bench at the same time, like if he doesn't start, that would be a huge ace in the pack, I think, at the same time from a Mayo perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose, and it's one that really, I suppose, still hurts with Mayo fans when you think back to 2014 when we played Kerry. That's exactly what Kerry did with Donny. He came off the bench, I think, with maybe 5 or 10 minutes to go, and Mayo were in the lead. High ball goes into him. He palms it down for I can't remember who scored the goal now, but it was exactly like I was saying there. Like, if he is to be used as an impact sub, wouldn't it be great to have someone of that stature that you could put in, stepping on the goalkeeper's toes and, throw in a Hail Mary to him and see how it goes. It mightn't work every time, but it's definitely a good ace to have up the sleeve that might come off once or maybe twice when needed. Like, but yeah, as I said, it'll be interesting to see what McStay's kind of mindset is around him. I think we'll know early on what he thinks, and where he's going to play him. If he's benching him in the league, I think that'll be a sign of things to come for the championship. And if he's starting him in the league, I think same as what we discussed there. I think there's going to be a lot of times where he'll be starting in midfield. Other days he'll be starting the full forward line, and he might even get a run out at half back. Who knows? Same as he does with his club.
Yeah, like I suppose with Conor Loftus maybe being announced as the captain, that maybe suggests that like he mightn't be a regular starter potentially. But I suppose, what are your thoughts on Conor Loftus being the captain? I mean, obviously he's a mainstay for Mayo over the last couple of years. He's probably like an unsung hero in many ways. He probably doesn't get the recognition maybe that he deserves. Like I think a lot of people always point maybe to the forwards or whatever, but you can't look past Conor Loftus. Like I do often remember him kicking good points against Dublin, particularly I think in that 2021 semi-final. I thought he played very well. So him coming in as captain, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and like I think that's what led Aidan to get a lot of stick in 2021 season was that he was captain and he was getting taken off against Dublin. And obviously I suppose you do think, when you think of your captain, you think of someone that is going to be on the pitch till the very end, until their feet are falling off, like they're going to be the last person to come off. And I suppose he's probably come in for a bit of stick for that, where he's maybe not perform the best of his abilities on big days. But yeah, no, I mean, there's umpteen leaders on that Mayo team that could have got the captaincy, but definitely Conor Loftus is one of the best players that we've had over the last couple of years. And, you know, another one that burst onto the scene, I think got us out of a few hairy situations in qualifiers in, I think it was 2016 or 2017, you know, with his points and his goals. And yeah, is a born leader, and, you know, someone who has stepped up to the plate on big days and showed that, you know, he's not one to kind of shy from responsibility. And yeah, I think, to be honest, I think the captain armband is a bit, not that it's irrelevant entirely, but I think, you know, when Mayo step onto the field, I'm sure there's 15 leaders there. You know, I'm sure everyone has their say. And, you know, you look at the likes of Stephen Cohen, who's been, you know, captains of underage teams and stuff like that. You know, I'm sure he's going to be right behind Conor Loftus there. And just because Conor has the armband around him doesn't mean that everyone else won't be rowing in and being as vocal as they want to be as well. And, you know, I think, you know, in terms of having the older players in as well, like, they're going to be as valuable as the captain, because, you know, we want leaders in your team. And, you know, the likes of your Aidan O'Shea's, your Cianan O'Connors, your Jeremy O'Connors, you know, all those people, they're going to be, you know, big lads that are going to row in and help the squad when times get tough and when they need to be, you know, kind of digged out of a hole. And, you know, that's one thing the Mayo do have. They have leaders in abundance. But yeah, no, fair play to Conor Loftus. You know, I'm delighted for him to get the captaincy, and hopefully it doesn't weigh too heavy on him. I mean, we often see that at times where great players are handed the captaincy, and I suppose it kind of maybe, you know, takes them a step back from their responsibility on the field then, you know. So hopefully he doesn't think too much of it himself, and that he can just go out and perform his usual, you know, standard, and keep kicking points and goals for us.
Yeah, and the overall expectation for 2023 then for Mayo, as you were saying there, like, you think a Connacht title would probably be the, you know, the barometer maybe of a successful season. Like, obviously it is going to take time to build in the new players and fill in the gaps of the retirements and everything else. And I suppose quarterfinals, semi-finals maybe, but I suppose there's a lot of very good teams out there, so it is going to be tough for Mayo. But you're looking at it and thinking Connacht title, and that would be good enough.
Yeah, not, like, I mean, not that it'd be good enough, but I think, you know, we Mayo fans of the last 10 years grew up in a kind of James Horan era where, you know, we won, I think it was 5 Connacht titles in a row. It almost became our title, you know, and it wasn't anyone else's to have. So I think as a Mayo fan, I would like to get back to that again, where, you know, we, as I was saying earlier, make McHale Park a fortress. You know, people that come down there during the league for our home games, that, you know, we win those games, and, you know, it's our territory. And I think getting our hands back on the Connacht title, that's definitely a main aim. And everything after that, in my eyes, would be a bit of a plus. But look, you know, again, that's what the head is saying, I suppose. But the heart always dreams of those big days. And, you know, with Mayo, you just never know. I mean, you know, after 2018, with all the obituaries that were written about Mayo after they got beaten by Kildare, you know, we came back in 2019, got to a semi-final, and then the next 2 years after that, successive finals. So, I mean, you know, we're here now talking about transitions and, you know, a new period for Mayo GAA, but who knows? Like, I could be talking to you this time next year, and we could be saying how, you know, Mayo got to a final, or who knows, might even, you know, won against all odds, you know, beating big teams. But definitely, I think the first focus would be great league campaign, secure Division 1 status. If we get to a Division 1 final, brilliant, you know, especially for the new guys coming in. And then after that, getting your hands on the Connacht title. And who knows? I mean, you know, on any given day, as they say, you know, and especially with the performances that Mayo teams so regularly put in, you know, year on year, you know, there is days where they can beat the big dogs, and, you know, who knows just what might happen on any given day. But yeah, no, in my eyes, I'd be very happy with the Connacht title, and, you know, to build a squad that I could say, right, next year we can really give the All Ireland series a good go, and almost be kind of like, we're going to win. You know, at the moment, I can't say with certainty we're going to win the Connacht title, because I think, you know, we have to face a very good Roscommon team first, and then you're meeting the, you know, the All Ireland finalists Galway in the semi final. Two massive teams. If you beat those two teams, you deserve to win a Connacht title. You know, so I would love to get to the stage next year where we're retaining our Connacht title, and we're going to do it. and we have a great team in place that can, you know, bring us on in the All Ireland series. But yeah, definitely getting a Connacht title back would be great as a starter.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, like, well, I think as a Dublin fan down the years, like anytime, like there've been times in the past, even like thinking back to 2017 and even 2018, like you said before, where I thought, you know, we shouldn't have to worry about Mayo now for a few years, and then you come crawling your way back like in 2019 and 2020. So like that's the thing with Mayo. It almost seems like when there's high expectations, it's sort of, you know, maybe things don't go to plan. But then sometimes when there's not much expectations, you actually surprise yourselves and go on a run. Like even in 2020, especially after being relegated and everything else, like I don't think anyone really expected Mayo to come back and reach an All-Ireland final. And I know there was maybe some other scenarios there with obviously Kerry getting beaten. You had to play Tipperary in the semi-finals, but even beating Galway with the form that they were in, and even in the final against Dublin as well, like you gave a fairly good show. And so I suppose that's the thing about Mayo football, is that you can just never quite like write them off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, for years we've thrived off the underdog status, and you know, even as far back as I can remember, like I'm, you know, one of the first kind of games I suppose in my memory would be when we played Tyrone in 2004, and Tyrone were All Ireland champions trying to retain their title, and we met them in the quarter final, and you know, nobody gave us a chance, and we bet them on the day. And I often find that with Mayo, that when they're coming into a game and there's not much hype and there's not much hope, that's when they, you know, play their best and win. And you know, we talked about the 2021 game against Dublin last year, but that was one of those days where, you know, we'd been beaten the year before and Dublin had beaten us in 2019, and nobody really kind of had any hope of Mayo even putting it up to Dublin. And you know, the signs were kind of on it in the first 55 60 minutes. But yeah, I think the underdog tag really suits us, and you know, it's fair to say that we're going into the Connacht Championship as underdogs, because I don't think anyone would be expecting anything less than Galway to win, you know, to retain the Connacht title. So yeah, who knows? That might be for Mayo's benefit, and it might drive us on to actually, you know, overcome those steps and get it back.
Yeah, and looking at the overall big picture then in terms of the All Ireland, like who's the favourites in your opinion?
I think you can't look past Dublin or Kerry. I mean, especially with, you know, the likes of Jack McCaffrey coming back for Dublin, and Paul Mannion. They're, you know, and with, I suppose, the cruel way that they were knocked out last year, you know, they gave Kerry such a close battle, and just at the very end, you know, Kerry outpipped them. I think they're going to be raring to go back. And Jesus Christ, like the last person you want to see coming onto a pitch is Jack McCaffrey. You know, we've been talking about engines and the likes of Lee Keegan. You know, that man is an absolute Ferrari. Like he'll just go for days, and you know, there's video footage galore to prove that. But yeah, I think if they don't meet each other, I think it'll be a Dublin Kerry final. And if they do, it's going to be one hell of a semi-final, you know, to see who gets past that. But again, you can't look past Galway. I mean, they have a very good young team. You know, Shane Walsh has had a fantastic club season with Crokes. I think, you know, I know there was a lot of controversy in the, you know, in Galway about that and about him changing sides. But to be honest, I think it's been for his benefit. You know, playing high intensity senior Dublin football, you know, at club level is going to do him the world of good. And you know, Jesus, if he starts this year with an All Ireland club medal in his pocket, that's only going to spur him on when it comes to Galway. And you know, he's already one of the best players in the country at the moment. You know, probably just maybe a peg or two lower than David Clifford in terms of the best forward in the country at the moment. You know, but you know, definitely those three teams, you can't look past them. And then, to be honest, you know, any of the Ulster teams are going to give anyone a run on their day. You know, Tyrone, Donegal, Armagh, you know, all last year caused problems for different teams. You know, Armagh even ran Galway close in the quarterfinals, and you know, I think it was kind of unfortunate that a penalty shootout was what separated them at the very end, because you know, you could tell that maybe if that went to a replay, Armagh might have came back the next day and took it from Galway. Like, so you can't really rule any of those out either in Ulster. But I think it will be Dublin or Kerry. I think that's going to lift Sam again this year. You know, you talk about the greatest of GAA players when you talk about Lee Keegan, but I think David Clifford is going to be probably top of that tree, you know, forevermore when he finishes his career. You know, what a player he is. And you know, that's obviously going to be food for thought for managers. And if Mayo were to meet Kerry again this year like they did last year, that'd be the first question mark on McStay's lips is, okay, how do we keep David Clifford quiet? So yeah, it's going to be an exciting championship, and it'll be interesting to see how things go. But obviously hoping that Mayo do well, and hoping that we progress out of Connacht and get a run maybe at an All Ireland. And it'd be great to face the likes of a Kerry or a Dublin or a Tyrone or an Armagh in a semi-final or a quarter-final. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think with the way the championship is structured with the pairings, I think it could possibly be a Dublin Kerry All Ireland final. And if that was to happen, I think the country might nearly shut down for a day or something. I think it'd be absolutely madness, I think, in both counties, and even for neutrals watching as well. But any surprise packages you think might cause a shock or two? There tends to be a few every couple of years. You had Derry last year, a few other teams here and there. Any teams you think might cause a surprise or two next year?
It's hard to say. I think Derry had a good run last year. Again, I'd say they will be there or thereabouts in terms of Ulster. That kind of province is such a shock factor because there's so many big heads meeting straight away in the kind of preliminary rounds that you could be in a quarterfinals in round one, and and you could be the likes of Donegal or Tyrone, working your way back up. I suppose in terms of our own county or our own province, can never really write off Roscommon. They were kind of finalists last year against Galway. And I think if they had another 5 or 10 minutes in the kind of final last year, they might have even pipped Galway to the post. They came back very strong, scored 2 late goals. I don't think they can be ruled out. And, I might have my head in my hands in, 2 or 3 months' time. They might, even give Mayo a shock and knock them out. But no, I don't. I think in terms of the latter stages of the championship, I think it's going to be the regular heads are going to be thereabouts. I think it's going to be probably maybe a Galway, Kerry, Dublin, and I think maybe Armagh could get Ulster. I think they had such a good run last year, and yeah, who knows? I think they can build on that, and definitely with their full forwards is Rian O'Neill.
Rian O'Neill, yeah.
Rian O'Neill, yeah. His name was gone from me there for a minute, but he's another fantastic player, and has great firepower up front. So I think they might just pip Ulster again. But who knows? You have the likes of Tyrone, who won it in 2021. Didn't have a great season last season, and they're going to want to be coming back, all guns blazing, and going to want to be, thereabouts in the All Ireland series too. So it's going to be a tough one to call, but I think it'll be. If it is going to be a Dublin Kerry final, it's hard to know how that's going to go. I think it could be a repeat of 2019 where there's going to be extra time or not extra time, but definitely replays to it. I think to try and separate the two of them.
Yeah. Even thinking about it, it's going to be absolutely mental. Sort of keeping an eye on the championship next year. But yeah, very much appreciate your time, Dara. Appreciate you jumping on. Obviously, speaking about all things Mayo and. Sure, yeah, look, it's not often a Dublin man, I suppose, and a Mayo man get together to have a chat and all the rest. So
exactly, yeah. Not in a peaceful manner like this, anyway.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, top man, Darren, much appreciated.
Cool, thanks very much, and thanks for having me.